What if I told you that a man, charming and seemingly normal, could be behind some of the most terrifying murders in U.S. history? Like, comment, and subscribe to support this chilling story of Ted Bundy, the monster, hidden in plain sight. On a cold night in Salt Lake City, Officer Bob Haywood notices a tan Volkswagen Beetle driving suspiciously through his neighborhood. He decides to check it out, unaware that this moment would lead to the arrest of one of America's most infamous killers, Ted Bundy. Haywood follows the Beetle as it speeds away from his approach. It eventually stops at an abandoned gas station. The driver gets out, wearing a black turtleneck and carrying suspicious items in the car, like ski masks and handcuffs. Little did he know, this man was Bundy. After a brief exchange, the man identifies himself as a lost student, but Haywood notices inconsistencies in his story. A search of the car uncovers burglary tools and strange items, but there's no evidence of a crime. Haywood is left puzzled but still suspicious of the driver. Despite the suspicious evidence, the man is released from the station on bail. Haywood is unsettled by the encounter, but with no clear charges, the man walks free. Little did he know the person he had just encountered was Ted Bundy, America's most wanted serial killer. Ted Bundy was a master of deception. He was charming, well-spoken, and good-looking, traits that allowed him to deceive many. He wore the perfect mask, blending in seamlessly with society while secretly harboring dark, violent desires. Born on November 24, 1946, Ted grew up in a seemingly normal family. His mother was dedicated, and they attended church regularly. However, the man who would become infamous showed signs of darkness early on. His violent tendencies often emerged in disturbing ways. As a child, Ted displayed disturbing behaviors. He would set traps for animals, dismantle them, and at times even try to drown children in swimming pools. Despite these alarming actions, there was no apparent guilt in his behavior, only a growing sense of control and power. Ted's relationship with his grandfather, an abusive and violent man, also shaped him. His grandfather was a racist and wife-beater, but Ted admired him and would often peek into his grandfather's collection of violent materials. This exposure to brutality marked the beginning of his dark path. Ted's early years were marked by insecurity. Despite being intelligent and good-looking, he struggled socially. He was often bullied at school and felt disconnected from his peers. He had bursts of rage and outbursts that made him an outsider. When Ted attended college, he was still quite shy and had little social life. A positive moment for him came in 1968 when he bought a tan Volkswagen Beetle. The car symbolized independence and freedom, and he cherished it, even as his inner darkness began to grow. As Ted progressed through life, he began to build the perfect mask, one of charm and confidence. He started dating women, attending law school, and appearing like the ideal young man. However, his true desires were still hidden beneath the surface, growing stronger by the day. Ted's desire to commit crimes started to consume him. As a teenager, he had a history of theft. But as he grew older, this wasn't enough to satisfy him. The darker side of him began to manifest. He yearned for more. This would soon evolve into a deadly obsession. On February 1st, 1974, Ted Bundy took the first life of many. He broke into the home of a student named Linda Ann Healy, abducting and killing her in cold blood. This murder marked the beginning of a series of gruesome killings that would span several years. Ted Bundy's victims were always attractive young women. He would approach them in public, often pretending to be injured or disabled. His charm and good looks would convince them he was harmless, making it easier for him to abduct and kill them, often in brutal ways. Ted's tan Volkswagen Beetle became the vehicle he used to transport his victims. The passenger seat was removed to create space for his victims' bodies. His car became a tool for death, taking him to secluded locations where he would strangle and sexually assault his victims. Ted's killings spread fear across Washington and Utah. Women were vanishing at an alarming rate, and the public was terrified. The police had no leads and no idea who was behind the killings, leaving a community in fear and a sense of hopelessness. While the murders continued, Ted maintained his mask of normalcy. He even worked for the Seattle Crime Commission, writing a pamphlet on rape prevention for women. His ability to blend into society while secretly killing women made him all the more dangerous. On November 8, 1974, Ted Bundy made a crucial mistake. He left a witness. Up until this point, he had been careful, but now his actions would be exposed. This would eventually lead to the police narrowing down their search for the infamous killer. The witness, a woman, reported suspicious behavior by a man with a tan Volkswagen Beetle. This description matched other reports of disappearances, and the police began connecting the dots. The hunt for Bundy was finally gaining momentum, but it was still far from over. The police brought in a lineup of suspects, including the man arrested by Officer Hayward. When Carol Donan, the witness, identified him as the man who had tried to abduct her, it was a major breakthrough. Ted Bundy was now officially a suspect in multiple kidnappings. On March 1, 1976, Ted Bundy was arrested and charged with the attempted kidnapping of Carol Donan. His arrest marked the beginning of a larger investigation that would eventually link him to numerous murders across several states. Bundy's trial began, and he decided to defend himself. Confident in his legal knowledge, Ted presented himself with calmness, appearing more like an attorney than a criminal. He maintained his innocence despite the mounting evidence against him. While in custody, Bundy used his access to the law library and the courthouse to plan his escape. He practiced various techniques, including losing weight and shaving his beard, all in preparation for his daring flight from prison. His determination to escape was chilling. During a recess in his trial, Bundy jumped from a second-story window of the courthouse. He ran across streets, over fences, and into an alleyway, starting what would be a days-long escape through the mountains. Bundy had planned this escape meticulously, prepared to outrun the authorities. The police quickly realized Bundy had escaped. Roadblocks were set up, and helicopters were dispatched to search the mountains. Bundy wandered through the rugged terrain, alone and disoriented, trying to find a way out. The manhunt was on, but Bundy managed to evade capture for a few days. For 5 days, Bundy hiked through the mountains with swollen ankles and limited supplies. He wandered in circles, getting lost in the wilderness. Eventually, he found a small cabin where he stayed for a night, preparing for the next leg of his escape. On the 6th day of his escape, Bundy found an old Cadillac with the keys still inside. His desperation drove him to take it, though he was weak and barely able to steer. Police officers spotted him driving erratically and stopped him, unaware they were about to arrest one of the most notorious killers in history. After a brief struggle, Bundy was arrested once again. This time he was too weak to escape, and the authorities had caught up with him. He was charged with numerous crimes, including his daring escape from the courthouse. Back in custody, Bundy was more dangerous than ever. He continued to plot his next escape while facing new charges. His calm demeanor and manipulative behavior made him a constant threat, even behind bars. Bundy was determined to continue his reign of terror. During his second trial, Bundy decided to represent himself again. His confidence never wavered as he faced charges for the murders of several women, including those at the Chi Omega sorority house. Despite overwhelming evidence, Bundy continued to plead not guilty. On January 15, 1978, Bundy broke into the Chi Omega sorority house at Florida State University. He brutally attacked 4 women, killing 2 of them. The horror of this attack sent shockwaves across the nation, making Bundy even more infamous. Kimberly Leach, a 12-year-old girl, was the final victim Bundy would abduct before his capture. She was taken while walking across her school's basketball court, and her murder would further cement Bundy's status as one of the most heinous serial killers in American history. Bundy was finally caught in Florida after a brief chase with police officers. He was found driving a stolen vehicle and was arrested after another struggle. This time, there would be no escaping justice. The authorities were determined to make sure Bundy would never kill again. Bundy's trial was a media sensation, the first of its kind to be broadcast on national television. People across the country watched as Bundy defended himself, charming the public with his confidence and charisma. His calm demeanor made him even more terrifying. As Bundy's trial continued, the media frenzy grew. People were fascinated by him, particularly young women who seemed drawn to his charm. His ability to manipulate the public and the courtroom made him an even more disturbing figure. As Bundy faced the death penalty, he began to confess to his crimes. He admitted to killing 36 women, though the true number of victims remains unknown. Bundy's confessions revealed the full extent of his depravity and the darkness that consumed him. On July 23, 1979, Bundy was sentenced to death for the murders of multiple women. The jury's decision was a moment of relief for the families of his victims, but it also marked the beginning of a long, drawn-out period of appeals and delays. Despite his conviction, Bundy continued to appeal his sentence, hoping for a reprieve. He maintained his innocence and tried to convince the courts that he deserved a second chance. However, the evidence against him was overwhelming, and his fate was sealed. On January 24, 1989, after spending over a decade on death row, Ted Bundy was executed by electric chair at Florida State Prison. His death brought an end to a reign of terror that had lasted for over a decade, but it didn't erase the pain and suffering he caused. The public's reaction to Bundy's execution was mixed. Some celebrated the end of his killing spree, while others were captivated by the media coverage surrounding his trial and execution. Bundy's death did not end the fascination with his crimes. What made Bundy so chilling was not just his brutality, but his ability to charm and manipulate those around him. He was articulate, well-mannered, and good-looking, which made it difficult for people to imagine him capable of such horrific acts. Just before his execution, Bundy confessed to more than 30 murders. He even provided details about some of his victims that hadn't been discovered yet. This final confession came too late for the families of his victims, but it helped investigators close some cold cases. Ted Bundy's legacy lives on as one of America's most notorious serial killers. His charm and intelligence made him particularly dangerous, as he was able to evade capture for so long. His story serves as a chilling reminder of how even the most ordinary person can harbor monstrous desires. In the final days before his execution, Bundy spent time with his lawyers and religious advisors. He showed no remorse for his crimes, continuing to manipulate those around him. His death marked the end of his reign of terror, but his story continued to fascinate the public. Ted Bundy's trial was a media sensation, the first criminal trial to be televised live across the United States. This unprecedented coverage allowed the public to watch a killer's every move, and Bundy's charismatic personality captivated millions. On the day of Bundy's execution, thousands of people gathered outside the prison, many with signs and chants calling for justice. The public spectacle surrounding his death was a reminder of the impact he had on the nation's psyche. Ted Bundy's execution took place on January 24, 1989. As he sat in the electric chair, Bundy showed little emotion, remaining calm until the end. His execution was a moment of finality for the families of his victims, bringing some semblance of closure. After his execution, Bundy's story continued to captivate the public. Books, documentaries, and movies were made about his life and crimes, further cementing his place in criminal history. His name became synonymous with evil, and his story was one of the darkest in U.S. history. While Bundy's killing spree came to an end, the mystery of how he evaded capture for so long remained. His ability to blend in with society and manipulate those around him made him one of the most terrifying criminals in history. Ted Bundy's story is a chilling reminder of the darkness that can exist within even the most charming individuals. His legacy lives on, not just as a serial killer, but as a figure who continues to fascinate and terrify people even decades after his death.